What's exciting you right now in the startup space outside of what you're working on?
I don't have a lot of hobbies, so Funda became a hobby for me.
How important do you think community is for a startup founder?
You're building something that involves connecting with CIOs or enterprise leaders. That community is important, right?
What are they looking for before they even consider adoption of whatever AI you're suggesting?
What is exciting is AI gives you that opportunity to build a ROI for your business, leverage that.
How would you say what allows you to constantly be in the entrepreneurship game and innovate and build and start a new company? There are a lot of ways to look at growth of a company that maybe you don't raise a $4 million seed, but you have a very healthy, profitable business.
I wish I could spend more time and money to operationalize, create a nice landing page, use that to essentially build some growth marketing effort.
Hey guys, welcome back to Funds and Founders. Today we have on Pratik. You had a history in various leadership roles. You've done sales, you've done a lot of data science. You were previously the co-founder of Stand Up Corp, which was acquired by Bain. Spent a couple of years at Bain. You were the CEO of Protector.ai, and then until most recently, when you started DataColor.ai, roughly a couple months ago. You're also pretty heavily involved with the Funda Group based out of SF. Started the Funda chapter. Big community guy in the Indian startup space in Texas. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell people what you're working on, where can they find you, where can they reach out, and we'll get into the conversation after that.
Yeah, so at Data Color, we have a mission to help chief data officers. We found this, I won't say a problem, but there was so much noise around adoption of enterprise generative AI. So we decided to start talking with functional leaders with domain knowledge of manufacturing, supply chain. So that's kind of the folks we are working with at Data Color. And yeah, I'm in Dallas and I'm active on LinkedIn. So anyone wants to get in touch with me, feel free to send me a LinkedIn request and happy to reconnect and chat.
One thing I wanted to kick off the conversation with is how important do you think community is for a startup founder?
I think it depends on the founder and also the domain. I think it's kind of like a consulting answer, which is it depends. So if you come from a very deep tech background and you have conviction on the product that you want to build, in a way, the community will be maybe your prior peers. But let's say you're building something that involves connecting with CIOs or enterprise leaders, then that community is important, right? I think the way to think about community is you should always think about not as a way to sell your product or service, but more like a feedback mechanism. Founder focus is really important. You can be a member of a lot of communities, but if it is not adding value,
Yeah.
then I think you should rethink your participation communities. If you are able to generate feedback, I think that's a great win for your startup. If you have other ways to generate feedback, you have to figure out in your priority list where community stacks. In case for me personally, I was lucky enough that I got involved with Funda actively after I had exited. I wish I was more involved before, but for me, it was more giving back, sharing lessons, and essentially, in a way, I don't have a lot of hobbies. So Funda became a hobby for me and some of our initial Austin friends who had relocated from Bay Area, like me. I moved from Dallas, so that was the main thing. That for me personally, it was more of reconnecting and giving back. So it depends on how you want to use it, but definitely if you are using it for feedback, it's awesome. I would say avoid using community for simply sales.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. One quick follow up there, right? So, like, how this Funda, there's the WhatsApp group in Austin that I talked about. There's probably a bunch of like spin off WhatsApp groups just for Indian community as well, right? How can someone who's just starting out, who's new to the startup game, how can they extract good feedback, good mentorship from these communities? Do you have any advice on how should approach that? Because what I've noticed based on the Austin scene is people are hesitant to ask for help.
Right.
They're hesitant to reach out to people on the group because there's a lot of silent people in the group who are available if you know who they are.
Right.
But sort of some of the barriers are like, I don't know you, I'm afraid to just like randomly message someone and like ask for help. I have this thing where I feel like founders are afraid of being vulnerable like in public. And so like you really don't want to go out of your way to ask someone you don't know for help. So how should someone think about approaching these communities and extracting help or value where they can? How do you even identify that opportunity and then go about and execute on it?
I mean, if you take a step back, right, just like customer journey, think about a founder journey, right? Talk about your startup on LinkedIn. You should talk about and have some conviction on why your startup exists. Use the interactions with your community or as you reach out, get more feedback, and also try and understand someone's point of view, right? What I mean by that is, first company was built on solving complex use cases in the Salesforce ecosystem. Now we are doing something in the Databricks ecosystem. When you reach out to somebody, the more context you have about the person, and these are all available hopefully publicly in
Yeah.
most cases in LinkedIn, and the context you have about yourself, I think you have to figure out that how can I personalize my reach,
100%.
and when I reach out to people, more than what they can value or what they can give me, you should think of what I can give back to them, right? So, for example, I have had very interesting, even in our Funda community, people reaching out saying that, hey, I'm working on some interesting use case in generative AI, wanted some feedback. Eventually, I said, hey, this doesn't really correlate to what we are trying to do, but maybe I'll help you based on your journey to connect with some investors. So, try to maintain a little bit of social media presence.
Yeah.
So when somebody is reaching out to you cold and they do a research on who you are, there's some
Yeah.
context.
Yeah.
Second is try and connect with people who you can give value and personalize the connect. Third, obviously, is just be very clear in your mind based on your stage what you're looking for. Now, if you're reaching out one on one, I think it's fair to even say that, hey, I don't have a funding problem. I'm looking for customers. I am looking for a specific contact in this company because looks like you know them. I
Yeah.
think it's good to have those in mind once you have a little more context. But definitely go with the intent of helping them. And if they're completely in a different ecosystem, let's say somebody is building, supersonic jets, and your company has to do with e-commerce, probably you should exhaust the list of relevant connects and then you
Before
go
you.
to the ones that are 2 degrees away.
100%. Yeah. One thing I'd like to add on that is nowadays, if people are only LinkedIn active or not like very public outside of LinkedIn, it's hard to know second degree connections you can realistically tap because sometimes people have reached out to me where I'm connected with the people they want to talk to. But when I look through that history of like how did I
Right.
connect, there's no personal connection with this person I've connected with, right? And so I'm happy to make an intro, but at that point, it's as good of a cold intro as you directly reaching out to this person because I met them in an event, I had a 5 minute conversation. I don't really have a relationship with that person. So there's like some context there, but I think there's a YC startup, Happenstance. They're an AI based startup. Gary Tan talked about it on some interview he did recently, where he's super excited about it because it connects to your LinkedIn, Twitter, email, and sort of builds this person graph for you of like who's connected where, like how are your friends connected, who are you connected to, and so it helps you find those second, third, fourth degree connections.
I always
I haven't tried it yet, but
uh,
he seems pretty bullish on it, so I'm
see,
excited.
my filter whenever I ask people, let's say I'm asking them for a connection, and I said, "Hey, are you able to text him or her?" Right.
Yeah,
So if this startup can also go, and I'm more active on WhatsApp than text, but if they can go and
look at WhatsApp.
include the WhatsApp,
Yeah,
then if I have at least sent him or her, I don't know, a birthday wish or a New Year wish or something,
yeah.
then the probability goes up by 10 times
100%.
versus a LinkedIn connection,
Hundred
right?
percent,
Yeah, yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I feel like so. We were talking about this before we started recording, but I've met so many people in Austin, sent messages, followed up, we chatted for a bit, but at some point it falls off, right? And I haven't found a good way to manage my iMessages because there's no good. I haven't found a good tool for me to help me go figure out, hey, who have I talking to, um, who can I reconnect with, who can I just send a hey, how are you doing message, right? Because a lot of the times when you actually need help from someone, you don't want to just have a text that doesn't have a reply and then you're like,
Right,
hey, I need funding, right?
right,
Whatever.
right.
So I've also been thinking about how to keep those relationships active, but haven't found a good solution
Right,
yet.
right.
What's exciting you right now in the startup space outside of what you're working on? Everyone's doing AI nowadays. How are you thinking about AI? How are you thinking about building your company? What's exciting you in this space?
Yeah, yeah. So we started DataColor very recently. It's November of 2024, so third month right now in February. I think one of the conviction and what was exciting is there is a lot of, I won't say wasted effort, But my prior company and even my professional career is mostly working as an employee, co-founder, partner with enterprise companies,
Yeah.
right? So I know
Yeah.
that space really well. I think there is a very different perspective if you look at the B2C, the consumer AI adoption, and some of the challenges where it comes with privacy, ethics. In case of enterprises, they probably are having those challenges, but more than that, I think there is a very big ROI conversation. What is exciting is AI gives you that opportunity to build a ROI for your business and leverage that if you do it correctly. Or you can have lot of cost surges that result in essentially the whole business case of why you started AI may fail, right? It's an opportunity as well as it's exciting, but I think our conviction on what we are doing is enterprise adoption of AI has started. There are a lot of companies that are monetizing that through consulting. There are a lot of product companies. You take the three hyperscalers, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, as well as you look at the data platforms, mostly Snowflake and Databricks. They have all the technology in place. Now, what it requires is what's the least part of resistance to show ROI and where can we leverage, you can call it generative AI or AI agents in the enterprise, right?
Yeah.
So that is the exciting portion, as well as also the risk portion that if you don't plan that, it can lead to a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And the second thing, obviously, is traditional technology, especially if you're working with IT departments, they look at their biggest KPI is operational efficiency and costs. The argument is can you get Mr. CIO or Chief Data Officer a seat at the table to be a revenue function? Can you go to your CEO and say that in my department, through our enterprise data, here are different ways we can not only make our analysts more effective, our employees more effective, our developers more effective and efficient, but hey, I can build a data product and make money for you.
So you can go from a cost center to a profit center.
Now, obviously, it has to depend on the industry. If you are
100%.
in
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
healthcare industry, are you allowed to sell the patient
Yeah.
data?
Yeah.
That I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are all uh, uh, be, subject to
Those
the
are specifics. Yeah. Yeah.
industry
Yeah. Yeah.
things. But monetization of your existing data and trying to leverage is interesting thing. I read a use case essentially at Walmart where they have a company called Data Ventures internally. It's the most profitable, one of the most profitable business units in Walmart, where they're essentially using their supplier data to sell the data back to them to give them some insights, right?
Got
So
it.
things
Okay.
like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You just don't have to use AI to make developers 20% productive or
Yeah.
your automation better, but you can also think about monetizing that, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the biggest opportunity I feel.
Nice. Two follow ups. So, like you've mentioned chief data officer a couple times. Is this a relatively newer role or function given the growth of AI over the last couple of years, or has this function existed since even before AI was such a major thing?
7, 8 years ago, there was this whole term called big data.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
irrelevant now, but there were a lot of these companies. I think they're probably now obsolete. Hadoop or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Cloudera, Hortonworks. So what happened was a chief data officer, I think even today is probably a C-1 to the CIO or probably their peers. Just like you have the chief information security officer, CISO, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're all part of the IT organization. I think they became prominent 10 years ago, way before AI was mainstream in enterprises, mostly to solve the governance compliance issues, which is now I have access to a lot of these newer technologies. Spark, I think, won that big data
Yeah. Yeah.
battle, and that's where I think Databricks has kind of become. But that's where I think the role really emerged. People had access to these technologies, but they also wanted to make sure governance, compliance, privacy were taken in place, right? Yeah.
Makes sense. Switching gears a little bit to your enterprise thesis and what you're excited about, can we explain to someone who's not super familiar with how enterprise works versus, SMB, B2B, or like, small enterprises or B2C works? What are the challenges enterprise or what are the issues that enterprises think about before adopting AI? So, like, a very bad analogy, but like on the consumer side, like, I'm open to trying out any tool that comes out and like checking it out, and I don't really care about connecting various of my own data sources to try something new out. Similarly, on the enterprise side, what are their concerns? What are they looking for before they even consider adoption of whatever AI you're suggesting? Like, what are those challenges? What are those?
Yeah, so I'll tell you with
roadblocks?
an example, and because this is for somebody who has little understanding of
Yeah,
enterprises, let's not talk about ROI, value realization,
yeah,
procurement, but let's talk about a real world scenario, right? Let's say you're trying to sell a car. You're unmarried, you're a single person. Essentially, you go, you like something, you buy a car, right?
yeah,
Now you complicate that, let's say, where you're trying to buy a family car. The decision has to be done by the husband, wife, the kids, and probably the grandparents. So something like that. There could be somebody similar to the kids who want to bring on cool technology. Maybe the parents are conservative. The grandparents have maybe focused on priority. So when you're selling to enterprises, you're not selling to a individual or you're selling to a company. You're selling to people's motivations and you're selling to people's risk appetite. Fundamental difference is they are not spending their own money.
yeah,
So it's not really if I'm writing a $100,000 check to buy a software, it's coming from my own money. The real difference is it's their profession. So
yeah,
if they make the wrong decision, they can lose their job.
yeah,
And if they make the right decision, they can get promoted, right? So you have to look at people's motivations and you have to remember you're not selling to individual but you're selling to groups. Everybody is more motivated to make themselves get promoted, and also they're all risk averse, so they don't want to get fired, right? So that's very different than
yeah.
anything to do with selling a product to individual, right?
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you had to put not numbers, but like how much does the value of the product and the ROI matter versus how much does, to your point, the motivation and incentive for the person making the decision matter? Is it always an equal weight, or is it possible that the motivation incentives drive the decision a lot more than the actual like ROI of the product and like what you're trying to do?
So I think there are three dimensions. So one is the individual's personal motivation. The other is the ROI of the product, and third is, unfortunately, fortunately, the human element of the relationship
Yeah,
that
100%. Yeah.
the individual has with, let's say, whether it's an IBM or Accenture or a
Yeah.
startup, right? So you have to look at three dimensions, and I think the biggest value is the personal's in motivation, then the relationship, and last is the product.
Got it.
And I don't know whether it is 40, 30, 10,
Yeah.
but the product probably has the least amount of
Of weight.
impact
Yeah.
compared to the personal motivation and the relationship. Relationship is in a way the trust means if I pick this company, will he or she go all the way to help me? Will they disappear and I essentially risk
Yeah.
losing my
Yeah.
job, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so so that is very kind of plays into minds of people, right?
Makes sense. An interesting thought that came to mind when you're saying this is I'm thinking about how do startups trying to cater to enterprise now think about marketing and like actually acquiring these customers, because what you're talking about from a relationship point of view and a motivation point of view is really hard to actually tap into. As for example, if I'm a new company, I want to sell to enterprises. If I'm new to the space, if I don't have the background, if I don't have the connections, it becomes a much harder problem for me to solve from a marketing perspective and a customer acquisition perspective as compared to someone who's building an inferior product but has been in and around enterprises for the last 10, 15 years. They already have a leg up to this younger founder, right? Would you agree with that or disagree with that, or?
I completely agree. If you look at the UI and the product, and if you look at, I would say, some of this legacy, whether it's an SAP Oracle,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
They are way more relevant in enterprises. There could be startups from a product perspective having all the better features, but
100%. Yeah.
unfortunately, that doesn't count because they are missing the relationship and they're missing the personal motivation piece, right?
Yeah.
So that's why no product companies ever starts in enterprises
100%.
unless and
Yeah.
until there is some relationship and you have a path to monetize it. You
Yeah.
generally start to build credibility and then you go up market, right? That's a typical playbook.
Following up on this, do you have any advice for someone in this space trying to do AI for enterprises? How should they think about marketing, building relationships? Do you have any advice on that? You've been in this space, you've been in and around enterprises. So, do you have any tips on just how to approach that problem of how do I get my foot in the door, so to say?
Yeah, so I think first of all, whoever is building this product, ideally they should have worked as an employee at least, if not a founder. So they should know the dynamics of an enterprise. That's, I think, is required. Second is, I think there are enterprises that are very keen to work with startups for innovative solutions. So you should go after harder problems that are not solved or available from existing vendors. So you have to make sure that you try and lot of mistakes people do is they say that, hey, we have a platform and you can do anything you want. I think you have to sell through use cases, which is, yeah, I am helping you solve this particular use case for demand planning in manufacturing, right? So you lead with industry use cases. You don't lead with tech. And third, which is important, is if you are a product company, let's say you are not funded yet, right? Uh, you should try and take some industry advisors you feel that allow you to build some credibility.
Yeah.
While they may not be available or they may be too busy to be in your
Corner.
customer calls,
Yeah.
but at least you can cite them as a reference.
Yeah.
What I've also seen successfully done is if you have relationship with some system integrators or SIs and they have a problem they're solving, maybe your product can be that utility that you can partner and say that, hey, you're solving this master data problem. Hey, we have this unique way to classify and
Yeah.
do data catalog and quality. Can you use my product as part of your solution? And then in return, give me some reference and
Yeah.
feedback, right? So yeah, different ways, definitely different ways, and it's a constant evolution. There's no one size fits
100%.
all.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. An interesting marketing technique I read about was a healthcare company that focused on growing a podcast, used a lot of cold paid techniques to grow the podcast, get it to top 10 healthcare podcast. And it ended up becoming such a strong media asset that their potential customers wanted to be a guest on their show.
Right.
And then that itself became an inbound channel for them because their potential customers want to come on, talk about their brand, and they would come up with these creative deals where, hey, you come on the podcast, but we'll figure out some sort of rev share deal where you use our deal, but then it'll be cheaper. You get you get a little bit of mix of everything.
Right, right.
So like we'll do an ad for you plus this plus that plus you buy our contract. It just became a very interesting channel to go to this big healthcare sector that is traditionally, I would say, harder to market to.
Correct, correct.
So I feel like there's a lot of innovative ways, like you're saying, of building those and finding a way. And those first couple deals are probably going to be the hardest. But once you do those, you figure out
Correct, correct.
something that works for you and your product, right?
Absolutely.
Switching gears to sort of what you're working on now. You've been in the game for a while. You've started a couple companies. You've exited one company. What are you doing differently with DataColor? What have been some learnings from the past experiences that are helping drive your current venture a different way? Or does something stand out that you're doing differently with DataColor than whatever you've done before?
Yeah, sure. So the first company we all came together was in 2016. So it's been 8 years since that time. I think a lot of the lessons are relevant, are still relevant now. As I was saying, I think for entrepreneur, two things are very critical: focus and feedback. So that is also very critical for data color. That you have to focus, and when you're starting a company, the focus is very different than let's say when you're your year 3 or 4. The second thing what we are now doing is I'm thinking about scale. When we were first time entrepreneurs, our whole vision was to survive. We were calculating things like, yeah, I'm making X as a salary. When can I catch up? In my mind, it was year. It took me 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I can now fund my lifestyle without worrying about trying to make a salary for the next 4 or 5 years. So my risk appetite definitely has gone up. Third is, while you have some credibility by being a second or third time entrepreneur, you also have a lot of responsibility. So the stakes are a little higher. So you also want to make sure that there is, especially with my new co-founders and as we bring on employees, we give them even a bigger opportunity for growth. And what I'm doing differently this time is in our current company and even in when we were running the first company. See, product market fit or founder market fit, these essentially lagging indicators. It's very hard to say that, hey, this is the day or time when I had my product market fit or now I have a repeatable process, right? So rather than thinking about that, what we are doing is we are doing a lot of quick experiments this time around. So we have narrowed down to 5 or 6 plays that, okay, our conviction is, for example, data quality is going to be very critical for people to adopt enterprise AI. Or currently, a lot of the AI agents lack the ability to take action in legacy systems like SAP and Oracle. So what we are doing quickly is we are writing these experiments and we are working with stakeholders for feedback, and we are having a perspective that all these will fail or some of these will become repeatable, but rather than doing one experiment or two experiments at a time and then essentially
Moving on, yeah.
pivoting, we are now doing 5 or 6. It's a little bit of chaos, but I feel we started the company literally in, we came out of stealth in Jan. November is when we all came together. Maybe 6 months from now, we'll settle down, right? That's kind of the new way of approaching things, right?
Nice. Would you say you're trying to fail fast, or is that the wrong analogy?
I mean, see, we are not, because we are dealing with enterprises and we are using existing platforms, we are not building something so unique that it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the right way to put that is we are trying to find the least path of resistance to get to a place where our solution offerings align with my buyer's priority in 2025. The biggest mistake startups do is the problem they're solving is relevant, is applicable, but people will not spend money now.
Yeah.
They will do it maybe later on. It's like trying to sell a Tesla charger in
Yeah.
2018 when you don't have enough Tesla cars,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody agrees you need chargers. Everybody knows that if you have a car, you need to charge
Yeah.
it. But if you're not looking to sell the car first, and you have this whole fascination of trying to sell the charger, you will never be successful, right?
100%.
So
Yeah.
that's what we are looking for. We are trying to figure out where will I get my project, solution, product, whatever you want to call it, in March, April of 2025 versus down the road, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes
So
sense.
that's kind of the outcome of the experiment we're trying to drive.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you say you're, I don't know if bootstrapping is the right word to use, but I've heard a lot of stories from like founders who second, third, fourth time around, they've sort of had a couple exits before. They're less smarter with their money, right? Like they're willing to throw more money at the problem to sort of figure it out and make progress. Where would you say your mentality is now that, like to your point, you're not worried about the salary as much, you're not worried about surviving as much, you're more worried about finding the right problem to solve and solving it the right way? Are you still bootstrap mentality? How does your mentality work with how to budget and how to
So what I
spend?
did is in my current company, and I don't know if this is the right approach. So when I shared that I'm starting something in November, a lot of people offered me some money. Now, obviously, I didn't get into the specific details of the
Yeah,
terms
yeah,
and
yeah.
all that, but I was very clear that I will not take money from any professional investors in the beginning. So, what I did was I capitalized the company into two buckets. The 50% of the bucket is essentially the founding team, where majority of that is me and then my other co-founders, and the remaining 50% of the current capital allocation is not your traditional friends and family, but essentially I took some investments from folks, either AI and data leaders, have some domain knowledge about
Got it.
data science, or are part of some product company where there is some partnership possibility.
So more strategic.
Yeah, more strategic, and also more than VC, a couple of folks who are part of private equity, but they put in an individual capacity. So that network is there, right? So
Makes sense.
I also feel that completely investing 100% on your own obviously gives you the biggest upside, because you then have very little to share, but it also creates a vacuum,
Yeah.
and diluting yourself 40-50% by your second raise also is not very attractive.
Yeah.
I said, hey, let's do a middle ground. Let's take some money, but let's not it be professional money where it has to dictate a lot of the
Yeah. Yeah.
things of how you
Now you're
operate.
always worried about the second round and
Yeah.
doing an up round and
So
everything. Yeah.
this time it's a little bit kind of a middle where taken substantial risk, but I've also I've adjusted it with ensuring that there are other folks who have some skin in the game,
Nice.
and then together with their feedback network and help, we have a higher probability.
Of
I think
success.
you should look at money as a function of probability of, hey, if I take this much money, will the probability of success go up or down?
Yeah.
If somebody, let's say, I don't know, let's say a shopkeeper or a person who owns a big restaurant gives me a $10 million check, it may be a bad idea because then I'll end up spending money before my experiments have resulted into a product market fit, before I have a conviction on where the focus is for 2025 for my buyers, right? So sometimes not having capital or constraining yourself is a better idea.
Yeah.
But once you have that, at least I'm lucky enough to now I can say that, hey, now if you pour some gas on the fire, it'll erupt.
Makes sense.
But you have to sort of uh, go to the professional investors only when you have that conviction yourself.
Makes sense.
If you artificially create that and you still get a check, essentially because of the liquidity preference and the preferred stack,
Yeah.
you will not make much money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the reason I ask is I know a lot of younger founders who will take a check from an investor because, they like the idea of getting, a couple 100K or 500K or whatever. But sometimes it's the wrong investor, to your point. When you go the VC route, I feel like a lot of younger founders don't understand the motivation of a VC to invest, right? They're investing a 7 8 year cycle. They have to show returns on their fund based on where they are on their cycle. That determines how much pressure they're going to put on you for growth, because they want you to raise a follow up round and show IRR and stuff. And I feel like the intentions of a VC may not align with the way the founder wants to run and build and grow. And if you're not particular about choosing the right investor, to your point, it can push you in directions that you don't want to go, right? But again, when someone's giving you a check, it's really hard to say no when you, especially if you're in that spot of like, the money would help
Right.
a lot, right? So it's always a two-sided coin there. I know a couple founders in the Middle East who've exited, got a pretty big exit, and I was asking him what's his take on building and raising and money, and he said that whenever I start my second venture, I am always going to raise, because he's of the mentality of why should I risk my own
Right.
capital
Exactly.
when there are people willing to risk, right?
Correct. Correct.
That's one side of thought. I met some founders in SF who were working with some ex Google person who was given a $20 million seed round without even an idea. And they were trying to work together, do co founder matching. And this guy wanted to, hire this person and hire that person and, hire the best XYZ, spend, half a million to a million a year in salaries. But she was of the mentality of like, we don't even have a product or an idea. How are we going to build a team and how are we going to drive that team if we don't
Right.
even know what you want to build in?
Correct. Correct.
So there's various like trains of
Correct.
thoughts
Correct.
across
Correct.
the thing.
Correct.
And I feel like it's really easy to get lost in the sort of the headlines and the titles, because I feel like for younger founders, when someone says, hey, look at this person, they raised a 3 million seed, they raised a 4 million seed, you hear all these things. And then I feel like maybe it's me, but subconsciously you associate success to raising a big round. And there are a lot of ways to look at growth of a company, that maybe you don't raise a $4 million seed, but you have a very healthy, profitable business. But people don't talk about that. People talk about all the seed rounds and the pre-seed rounds and all the valuations and everything. So you sort of have to make sure you understand the noise the right way. But yeah, that's interesting. I like that you talked about choosing strategic partners. How did you go about finding that? Did that take a lot of time from your side, or was
So
it
I
more
had
inbound?
no, I had a little bit of a advantage. As I said, what I am suggesting, as I said, the journey is 8 years.
Yeah.
May not be easy for me to replicate that when I was in my first or second year, right? But I'm a LP in couple of funds.
Yeah.
I'm also investing in some. I was rather investing till last year in other companies. Now, kind of, I'm more focused in my own. But what happened was through various networks, whether it's Funda or even in Texas, I started talking with mostly product or service companies trying to disrupt the AI space.
Yeah.
I, in fact, invested in a few of them. Or in some cases, if there was some deal in the funds that I'm LP in, they would call me for due diligence from a feedback perspective. So that kind of helped me build a network.
Yeah.
Now, when I decided that, hey, now I want to look at data color and I want to take some money, but I want to take it from people who can help me in the journey. I again reached back to the similar people.
Got it.
And I said, hey, I am trying to do this. This is my thesis. I also sort of wanted to tell them that I have skin in the game. So if I am asking somebody to put, let's say, $100,000, I tell them that, hey, I have put, let's say, $500,000. I never say that I don't have skin in the game, right?
Makes
so
sense.
I say
Makes
that
sense.
this is an opportunity where I feel all of us can succeed. And this is a way for you to kind of give me some feedback. But if you give me some investment, I know you also know that in that feedback will be a lot more detailed and specific.
100%. 100%.
Because you then have a little bit of personal connection with the money that you have put.
Yeah. 100%.
Versus while you may have good intentions and you give me feedback, it may not be as specific, right? That was the main
makes
thing.
sense.
So I told them that the reason I'm asking you to put the money, and I was very clear that maybe they're in a position of even making me a customer in their own company. And I said that is secondary because the business can't be built on one or two companies. But what I'm more looking for is your industry connects, your peers, the people they trust you. I want you to connect me with them. If you have the conviction and you have put the investment in the company, that is way more than being just a random
100%.
advisor, right?
Makes sense.
So those were some of the things we did.
Nice.
But yeah, I do feel that may have not worked for me in my
Previous.
first company because I didn't have that network
Yeah.
or I didn't really have that ability to say that, hey, for every $1 you put, I'm actually putting 5 or 10x. So we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
equal risk in this. So I think
Makes
it
sense.
depends
Yeah.
on where you are and how you want to leverage your network. Yeah.
Are you worried about lengthy cap table, or is that not a concern?
I think we are good. By the way, on a different note, there's a YC company called Pulley. We're using that
Okay.
because a lot of people said don't use Carta. Yeah, I mean, I log into Pulley and I can see people, and I'm not worried.
Okay.
I would
Police sponsors.
look at maybe a private equity or a VC down the road where they may be open to
Buying
buy
out.
out
Got it,
all
got
the
it, yeah.
initial investors.
The
And
re-
right now, they don't have any rights
Yeah.
um, or anything. So it depends on how
The
the
reason I
structure
ask is we started an event in Austin with a couple of friends, an investor poker tournament. And so the idea was investors, buy into $300, $400. We got 20, 30, 40 people. The prize was like 5K. And whoever won picked one of the startups pitching to just write an angel check into, right? So you turn 250 into 5K. That became an angel check for someone or a pre-seed or whatever you want to call it. All the startups that got selected, they said that they don't want to take a small check because they're raising a bigger round and they don't want too many people on their cap table. And I've heard this a lot, which is why I asked that sometimes founders are afraid of having too many angels or too many people because that affects how a bigger VC will look at your cap table. Maybe they don't want the mess. But that's why I asked if that was a concern or not. I don't know. I don't know if I've never raised, so I can't tell you if it's actually a problem or not. But I've heard
I
that.
can imagine if I'm on the other side as a VC. Yeah, I can imagine why it's a problem. There are ways you can create one single special
SPV,
purpose
yeah,
vehicle
yeah.
and give that entity and then whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
So,
if a
but no,
company is doing okay and has a
it's
growth, these things for a VC hopefully are not
not a
as
problem.
important as the company.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Makes
I
sense.
can imagine.
But yeah, towards the end, I like asking a couple questions, and then go through that. But some things I like asking every founder I've had on is, what's your tech stack? How are you running your company? So you mentioned Pulley for like equity and cap table, but if you could just quickly walk through what tools you're using and what tech stack you're using to run your company, that would be great.
Is evolving. As I said, we just
Yeah.
started and came out of stealth in January. So yeah, we are kind of mostly relying on the Microsoft tech stack.
Okay.
So we are using Azure. We have our own instance of Databricks on
Nice.
Azure. We have been leveraging some, I think, Crew and LangChain for building some of these agentic proof of concepts. And we're also working, experiment some of the Hugging Face
Got it.
models, right? So
Nice.
that's kind of on our dev/engineering side of things. And then, yeah, operationally, yeah, Pulley is our cap table management system. QuickBooks is used for our
Accounting.
accounting. Yeah, we are kind of standardized on Microsoft. So
Okay,
we
pretty
use
cool.
using Outlook and Office.
Okay, pretty cool.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
What's your support system? How would you say what allows you to constantly be in the entrepreneurship game and innovate and build and start a new company?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough that I had reasonably okay exit. So I don't know what will happen to the investments, but so far, at least that investment is allowing me to take some risk.
Yeah.
I have a young 5-year-old son, so both my parents and my wife's parents, they come and spend 3 to 4 months each.
Nice.
So there is a lot of family
Yeah.
activities and
Nice.
ways to decouple yourself from the entrepreneurship thing. Kind of recent in Dallas, 2 years, a little over 2 years. So
Okay.
I also don't have a big social network, but I'm trying to also connect
Nice.
with folks and meet. Unfortunately, most of the folks I meet are either entrepreneurs or trying to build something. So
Yeah.
probably I have to figure out how I can find others.
Nice.
So I have other kind of conversations, right?
Nice. Nice. Pretty cool. I do this bit where I ask everyone a last question. So I'll ask you a question from a previous guest and then I'll ask you to give me one for my next guest. Your question is, what is the one thing that you know you should be doing to unlock growth that you are avoiding?
Again, we are 60 days in the business. I don't, let me think, what am I think some of the tactical things are still on our to-do list, which is we have this data and AI leadership events. I wish I could spend more time and money to operationalize, create a nice landing page,
Nice.
use that to essentially build some growth marketing efforts. I think some of the growth marketing efforts, social media marketing efforts, back burner, I'm still using word of mouth. I hope to get to that list and then make it a little more formal and professional. I think
Okay.
that is something I feel can help us little bit of growth. Yeah, yeah.
I feel like if you're not an extroverted person, putting yourself out there is actually pretty hard. Like if you're not someone who's active on social, posting about all these things, like even doing this, like I don't like social media at all. And this podcast is the first thing I've done where I'm like, I'm going to be putting content out there, right? Like, and then there's so much thought of like people like it, not like it. I've just learned to tune out from everything.
Right, right, right.
But to your point, that initial step, especially when you're early on, you have to be founder first. You have to, tell your vision, tell your company, like you understand what you're trying to do better than anyone else.
Right.
So it's gonna be the easiest for you to go and tell that story, whatever media you want to use. But I feel like if you're not that, it's really hard. It's really hard to sort of take that step and be like,
By the
let
way,
me go talk about my stuff.
yeah, on the growth side, interestingly, in my prior company, I think we sold the company in our 5th year. But in our 4th year, we started a podcast. So I hosted around 20, almost 35.
Nice.
We did 35 episodes where I used to essentially interview a practitioner and then essentially hope that we have some sort of relationship so we can then follow up with some project and something. But I never got back because after that we got acquired and then I got busy. But maybe that could be something we can look at down the road. We'll see.
Nice. And what's your question for my next guest? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be like startup. It could be whatever you want it to be.
What's the best vacation you have not gone yet? You would go this year.
What's yours? Do you have one?
We took my son to India after, like, he was born during COVID. So this was the first time we took him, but we couldn't really travel a lot in India because we were not sure. I think he really had a good time. So maybe this time when we go towards the end of the year, we'll probably take him to places outside.
Nice. Where do you go when you go to India?
Both my parents and my wife's parents are in Mumbai.
Okay, nice.
So this time we'll probably spend less time there.
Nice.
We'll see. Yeah.
Pretty cool. But no, I appreciate you coming on. Once again, if you want to plug what you're working on, where can people reach out? We'll link everything as well. But where should folks reach out?
Not just enterprise leaders, but if you are a entrepreneur, early stage, building to solve the AI problem for enterprises, happy to have a chat, help you with my perspective. We are looking to invest a little bit in companies that can essentially be accretive to our growth in DataColors. So yeah, you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn.
Nice. And we'll link everything. But
thank you.
Thank you for coming on.